The real news is that green has always been best. Welcome to WAAAGH Tactics. Today we're going to talk about how the Orks just went out with a bang with several undefeated lists and X1 performing lists. But on top of that, there was an actual event that had several, a couple, two to be exact, more Dakka lists. So we're going to look at those lists specifically. We're going to get a shout out to the other players that did well, even though most of them actually had changes. So we're not going to go over every list, but we will still give a shout out to a Warhorde list that I thought needs to come to the attention of everyone, because the question is in play. More Dakka will be nerfed. What is next to play? So is it Warhorde or is it something else? Will GW go too crazy? So today we're going to talk about how more Dakka has already made a bang on the meta. So of course, got to give a shout out to today's sponsor, the Baron of Dice, as they allow us to do our paint competition. So get stuck in with that, lads, as it's great support for the community and it's fun for everybody who gets stuck in. So shout out to the Baron of Dice and their high quality dice. As you can see, the paint competition winner on screen. And then we have Forge Fire Gaming. So this is the terrain I personally use at home, and they run at the GTs around here in the Midwest in America. High quality train. The actual bases have nice little slits in them, so you can actually remove the modular bases easily and place them around the field and actually take accurate measurements. So it's big help for headaches. So shout out to Forge Fire Gaming. Check them out in the description. So, of course, we have to give a shout out to the undefeated WAAAGH. So, like I said, there was actual several people who were going for win 4-1 or X1. But, of course, we've had a data slate. So, I'm not going to cover all the Tactical Brigade lists because they did change by orders. So, we will have to see what happens with that if people are even still interested in that. But I need to immediately shout out my boy Nicolas. So, Nicolas is actually in the Discord. He actually won a golden ticket with the Green Tide, and he actually gave me a Google Doc for his notes. And we're 7 hours difference because he's in Finland, and I didn't check while he was still awake if I had access to the doc, and I didn't. So my bad. So I'm going to bring him his list and the docs next week, so I can go over that. I'll go over his notes and everything next week. So I still have to give him a shout out because it's freaking awesome. And I feel like we have the strongest Green Tide community in our Discord and possibly all the 40K communities, because I don't know how many undefeated / super big bangers are up in our Discord for specifically Green Tide. So it's pretty awesome. So shout out to my boy Nicholas. We will still go over you. Then we have Justin Moore with the Iron Cage and Bedford beatdown, undefeated with his Tactical Brigade. And then Jensen Go and March from a Crag GT, also going undefeated with Tactical Brigade. So I hope you guys show us what's up and if you're going to stay kicking it with Tactical Brigade. So with that being said, time to move on to the more Dakka list. So we actually had both lists at this specific event that was called that 6++ Grand Tournament. This was in the United Kingdom. It was a 53-player event, and it was using the WTC terrain and mission pack. Wish I would have received that, but hey, I didn't get it. It's all good. I don't really know too many it gets in the UK yet. So that being said, we'll go over Jack and Courtney Rhodes as they both brought more Dakka. But as you can see, the actual winner of the event is Jack Tight War Masters team, his team War Masters. I read that just because I was so excited. Sorry, guys. So let's go over his list specifically, because he brought some of the stuff that was well known. But as we should already know about around here in this community, you don't got to take people's lists. You got to bring what you like, you get. So Jack Tight, going into WTC terrain has a different outlook than some of us in America, where we're very familiar with running a variety of vehicles, is what I'll say, right? We actually have access to using kill rigs, larger vehicles. Truck spam doesn't feel as door stoppy, in a sense, or parking lotty. And therefore, in the WTC, their boards are sometimes perceived a little more dense. Therefore, you can't move the vehicles around as easily. Of course, you can still run trucks and such. But I can see why he has a totally different outlook. I'm not going to say I understand exactly how he took this list. Mobs of Boys wasn't on everybody's first guess for more Dakka for their first winning event list. Of course, we all love them boys, but I can start to unpack in my mind how this actually works, which is what we want to do around here and get ideas. That's why we like to be creative when everything of new detachment, new list, data sheets come out. We all talk about what's strong and what is obviously good and appealing, but a lot of the time very successful players are simply creative and fearless players to an extent, right? Where they don't care what everybody else is bringing to the degree that they don't think it's untouchable if they don't bring the exact same thing. So in this case, he was a great example in that by bringing mobs of boys with some pain boys. So with more Dakka list, he has 2 Big Macs with shock attack guns, 1 with targeting squints, and then 1 with Gob Stundabus. So I think the Gob shot Gundabus is kind of usually just if you have extra points. And then he has a 3rd Big Mac with shock attack gun. Double pain boys, one's the the warlord, and then Zagrat Wartsnaga. 2 20-man units of boys, 3 trucks, 2 5-man units of Gretchen, a 22-man size Gretchen unit, and a minimum size unit of Gretchen, 3 10-man units of Ludas, and then 3 units of tank busters. The sergeants both brought rocket pistols. Absolutely love the idea of using the boys. A lot of the time what's happening across the 40K community when they're thinking about, well, if you have to face more Dakka, this is what you got to do. You got to pressure them, you got to infiltrate, got to get in their face. And they're right, because a lot of the time people are already looking at it as, I'm just going to put trucks on the door, I'm going to drive towards you, I'm going to disembark and shoot at you, or I'm going to stage up, get out of the vehicles, advance, and then shoot at you, and then charge, right? So in this case, he was like, well, I'm actually going to have something to create space and actually create layers so you can't reach my Dakka, and you do have to put full commitment of your army into this unit, whether it's melee or shooting. Most armies don't have a specific unit that are going to one-shot 20 boys when they have the pain boy, and specifically if they're in the wall. Not to mention that a 20-man unit of boys that has wall at demand means that it has the defensive output, but also the threat range. So when you're staging in some of these L-shaped pieces of terrain, and you can actually stage up boys in there, you can declare the wall, you run right out of there, you flip the enemy's primary objective. If you're really good at swinging boys, a lot of the time, which simply means when you declare the charge and you've finished the charge, you've intentionally or unintentionally had they already based the model completely. Therefore, the remaining models can kind of string out and go in different directions. If you ever watch a high-level Green Tide player, or that I'll demonstrate hopefully on the channel soon, hint, hint, I've already been making content for that, but that you can witness what it means to actually move out and kind of swing mobs of boys to take up more of the field and interact with different units and pile into combats that they didn't actually declare in the charge, and also swing objectives even if the unit isn't specifically on it, right, that they're charging. So these 20-man mobs act as not only a defensive layer for your guns and your Dakka, but it acts to kind of add, it's a big old fat net if for these armies, for example, like World Eaters that a lot of people are having an issue with, where they're running up and touching a truck, popping a truck, then consolidating into the unit, then the unit can't fall back. Well, in this case, it's like, run into my boys. They have a little bit of durability, kill them, but it takes a lot of your 8-bound to actually kill the whole unit. And then in this case, we just pick you up in that after that. If not, if you play a little bit more defensive, we get to walk up the field. We stage up in the middle with these mobs of boys. We declare the charge and go interact with either near your home objective, retaining our natural expansion, flipping the middle at will, and then having Zod go attack your natural expansion. So there's a bunch of different ways this could be very appealing. I don't know exactly on WTC that I can say that I would want to bring like 20 boys in from reserve, but that's another option. Maybe, not saying that he did it. Of course, you're putting on the table as an Orc player, need to unpack this. If you cannot hide 20 or 20-man boys because he simply doesn't have a wagon, for example, right? And you're playing on some of these GW layouts where there's only one good spot to simply stage 20 boys and then move towards the middle. In this case, maybe a big unit 20 might go on reserve for Americans in our case. But he still bought 3 trucks. That's what we're talking about, specifically maybe for the Ludas. But in some cases, people like to bring the Ludas in reserve because they have longer lines of sight. Sometimes they'll put tank busters and then 5 flash gets into the truck and act as a very active SWAT team. And that helps tank busters actually stage up closer and get within the 12 inches. Be in mind, now you have to actually see to use your bomb squig. Therefore, you have even more incentives to get within 12 inches and to actually see them so you can shoot your rocket pistols. So therefore, you see his double rocket pistols. I do suggest custom Mega Blasters on your Ludas, the assured 3 shots, so that you can try to get sustains off that. It's really nice when it spikes. Of course, I know you can kill yourself. You shouldn't be scared of that. More Dakka, right? That's my face. Yes, I pressed the button. With that being said, the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting here is no Storm Boys. No Storm Boys. So on your P's and Q's to score your secondaries here, something that you can't overlook right? So if you're someone who's like, I'm just going to steal this list, bet the first thing you're going to struggle with is scoring your secondaries if you don't simply annihilate your enemy. Now, there might be a case that he simply annihilated his enemy in like 3 turns, but he didn't get full 20s on his score or 18s or 19s, across the board or anything like that. So he did have shifts contesting here that went on. Therefore, if you're looking to play this or an iteration of this, I'm going to say be aware that you're going to not have as much Storm Boys for what it looks like. Let me double check before I say that, because sometimes I'll be fat fingering stuff because I'm like, hold on, I feel like everybody has to have at least one Storm Boy, bro. But no, I'm double checking here on BCP. Yeah, luckily it's live, so you guys know I triple check right here live. Actually, I'll let you guys look with me. Let me do that. No Storm Boys. Here you go. Here's what I get. And I'm kind of fast. Sorry. Yeah, no Storm Boys. I thought that was pretty sick. I feel like Storm Boys were making it on every single list that we were looking at. So yeah, somebody asked, thank you, Arcane. That's what I'm talking about, amigos. That's why it's fun as life. No Storm Boys. And I thought that was interesting too. I don't know if you thought I'm sure many people think that too, because it's almost like you're plastered in your mind. One Grout, one Storm Boy, or at least 2. So let's look at his path to victory. Score differentials here. Yeah, they're a staple. I know, right? So let's take a look at his first matchup from this get, where he went into the Chaos Demons Strike Force, the Plague Legion. Very awesome. This is the Nurgle one where they have you take a lot of battle shock tests. Therefore, if you fail them, you obviously take some mortal wounds, and I believe they heal as well. Almost forget. So very in-depth damage dealing based off you failing battle shocks, which is not something we're great with Orks, and we normally love to have the OC advantage. So this becomes a fun cat and mouse game if you're just not more Dakka. Whoa, no, I'm just kidding. So we have great unclean one, Poxbringer, Rodigus, and then Sloppity Biopiper. One Nurgling. Okay, so I bet you he at some point was like, man, I wish I had more Nurglings. Right? So that's what most people are kind of wondering. Maybe not on WTC. And he doesn't have a parking lot. He just has boys. But then again, that's why the 20 mana boys are sick, because most people are thinking I can just spam Nurglings into these Orc units. Me specifically, when I played more Dakka, someone brought a Nurgling brick at one point, and they got into my lines. I didn't have commandos in that iteration, and I was just kind of like, okay, that impacted me a little more than I suspected, even though I'm already somebody who constantly preaches to bringing infiltrators, right? So the one time I don't, of course, they Nurgling brick me up, right? So that's what we run into. Then we have 2, 3, 4 bricks of Plague Bearers, followed by 3 units of Beasts of Nurgle, followed by 1, 2 Plague Drones, and then a Soul Grinder. So these guys are a bit tougher to deal with than you'd expect a lot of the time as an Orc player. Be aware. T5, 2 wounds a pop. They do possess an invuln. I think it's a 4-up, actually. Maybe a 5. I don't want to forget. So yeah, and so you got to be respectful of them. No Rodigus. Actually, sorry, there was a Rodigus here, which means he can cut your OC in half as well. So those boys are only OC 1 in this matchup. So nonetheless, you're gonna actually have to become more familiar with these demons, but this is sometimes a bit more of like, well, I really want to play Nurgle demons. He did end up putting up 18 points there. I do think he just has all the tools for that. Being able to declare a wall and kind of surround some of these big unclean ones so they can't move, and then another one of your boys be able to brick up on the Plague Bearers. And to be honest, the Plague Bearers want to be on objectives, therefore they're going to get looted bombed if they're regardless, right? So we carry on. So let's go into the second game where he dropped a big 20 bomb on Necron Hypercrypt. Adios, Necrons. Not specifically to you, Mark. Don't worry. I just, it's fun when Orcs find Necrons. So we have Hexmark Destroyer, Locust Lord, Overlord, Plasmancer, a bunch of characters. 3 units of 5 Immortals, 2 units of 5 Flayed Ones, a big brick of Locust Destroyers, 2 3-man units. 3 3-man units of Locust Heavy Destroyers, 2 3-man units of Scorpec Destroyers, and then a Tomb Blade. I like the kind of spam of 3x3x3 for a bunch of these small units, because they have a lot of characters here. For regenning some durability. This is Hypercrypt? Yeah, so different take on Hypercrypt than I've seen. Maybe it's just, where our gets are at, that I'm not familiar with the UKTC. So Well, I guess not the UKTC because you're playing WTC terrain, but I'm saying the circuit of players since it's in the UK, right? That's what I was looking at. Now I'm second guessing myself. I'm pretty sure they were. Yeah. All right, cool. I was right. I'm gonna misspeak, and then y'all gonna be like, "This American." So yeah, big 20 bomb on there. One something about having big bricks with boys that and Zod, for example, just Zod scout take up the space. Now, did he have? I think did he have flayed ones? Oops, I just clicked on Jack again. Sorry, Jack. All hyped up here. Did he have flayed ones? He did. So he did have infiltrators. You know, he did have 2 5-man units of flayed ones to infiltrate to kind of deal with Zod. But in this case, you got 20-man units of boys. You stick those flayed ones too close, throw boys up the field, and then you start the catastrophe for hypercrib. So it's kind of like doesn't really work out for him anyways. That's what some people. I'm not saying he techs to go against more Dakka by any means. I'm just saying, as someone who's thinking to tech against it, there are ways that we can still get around that if we have that 1 CP in for however long we keep it for. Regardless, if we still keep this 1 CP Dakka, WAAAGH, we see 1 CP WAAAGH. It comes down to, is GW going to allow us to retain the gaining of benefits from the WAAAGH for the unit? If they make it 2 CP and you don't get the benefits from your data sheet that are active during the WAAAGH, that could detriment someone like Zod directly, right? So people are worried like, well, what if Zod gets nerfed? Well, what if they just super nerf the strat so it doesn't work for Ghaz, for Zod, for the Morkanaut, Gorkanaut, for example, units that have data sheet abilities that are correlating with the WAAAGH. Definitely don't want them to do that, right? But we do know GW just kind of act like that sometimes. So we have to think about that as org players. What are other interesting things we see? And right off the bat, we're seeing with Jack, boys can be a very interesting thing. Now, for 2 CP, would you still want to give a 20-man unit of boys a WAAAGH? That now becomes the next question. So let's carry on to his third game, which was against the Ultramarines, Liberius Conclave. So he says, just here to dodge Jack. That's his name. Ed, you have failed. The warp was not, so the forces of the warp got to you. The Great WAAAGH found you. And the energies of the WAAAGH overcame your Ultramarines and found you. So here we are. We have Librarians of Phobos armor, 2 units of those, and the Librarian Terminator armor, Rebute Gilliman, and then Uriel Ventris. These guys are kind of cool, like the detachment. They can choose like active army abilities, such as more mobility, -1 to being hit. So they do have like abilities to stack some pretty good defensive and offensive abilities. Then they have strats that can, if you're in one of these Librarius kind of phases, then you get more stacking bonuses onto them. So he has a Desolation Squad. There is, from what I understand, the ability to gain plunging fire from Desolation Squads while you're playing on the WTC terrain. So that's pretty sick. You guys playing with that? Desolation Squad's cool. I bet Ludas are even cooler then. Then you have 2 units of Eliminators, followed by 2 units of Incursors, a Scout Squad. Big Burk of Stern Guard. Now, the cool thing about the Stern Guard in this case is they'll get like a little, I think they'll get aerial. So they'll be looking for sustained, and then I think their weapons actually are anti-monster, anti-vehicle 4+, and then they actually get devastating wounds on the 4+, and then versus their oath target, they get reroll wounds. So they're pretty much just like putting 20 wounds, 30 wounds. They will absolutely one-shot a Morkanaut, no problem, if you see this from your homies. And then he's a Terminator brick. These guys would get these guys have Terminator and Thunder Hammers and stuff like that. I can't remember exactly what the punk combo was there. It's pretty powerful. They do get obviously the mobility, from that, and they get advance in charge. So these dudes have covered big bricks of distance on me. I had them staged up in middle terrain. I blocked them so that they can move. I was like, all right, they shouldn't be able to get to me. Buddy rolled a 6 on his advance and then rolled on a 10 on his charge, and he was up in one shot a 20-man unit of boys I had. So it's not assured that he can one-shot a 20-man unit of boys, but I have actually had one of those units hit one of mine, but he didn't have a pain boy in that unit. So if he has a pain boy from the math, he would survive that. Nonetheless, still pretty devastating possibilities here. So you act appropriate in that way. 16 points right there. And then, of course, there's Rebute Gilliman. So we go to his 5th game, which was against another orc player who was playing more Dakka. This was another Orc player. I think he lost this game and then the next game. So shout out to my boy Alex. Part of the Great WAAAGH as well. Oh, well, I'm not sure, but you're part of an Orc player, so you're part of the Great WAAAGH. You know what I'm saying? So we have a Beast Boss. Triple Big Mac with shock attack guns, one with the Gobshot Thunderbus, and then the targeting squig. Mr. Boss Snickra. This is a theory on Boss Snickra here, right? Right. Alex, maybe, is he actually has the ability to infiltrate, therefore he can be in that middle stage terrain. The strat to remove cover does not require line of sight. It simply requires 18 inches. Therefore, Snickrot not only negates the enemy's infiltration, but it allows you to strip cover early in the game and actually take advantage of your looter's range. That's the theory behind Snickrot. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that at all. It's been something we've discussed. If I play for infiltrators, I play for Mandos. The 10-man unit is commandos typically I do, but I'm not sure about WTC if it just becomes impractical to hide them anywhere. So yeah. Then we have Ghaz Thraka. Yes, he absolutely works in this detachment. Played it as well alongside Zod. It does give its own problems to something like a demons matchup specifically. But in this case, he was against another list of more Dakka. Then we have a War Boss followed by Zagrat Wotsnaga. Ooh. Then we have a Beast Snagger Boy unit followed by 2 trucks, a big brick of Breaker Boys, a 10-man unit of Gretchen followed by a 22 size unit of Gretchen, and a 10-man unit of Gretchen. 1 brick of Lutas with the rockets, and then a 5-man unit of Lutas. So he said, possibly just didn't have all the spammy kind of stuff. Happens. 3-man unit of Meganobs. Whenever I did bring Ghaz, though, I did make sure I brought 5. Or if I could 6. I do think if you're going to do this for whatever short time we can do this, bring it all. Go ahead and bring that big brick. Not only because it helps Ghaz actually get up the field and actually becomes a magnificent value and target for the enemy and something for them to worry about, like a big death ball missile with that 1 CP. But it becomes hilarious for you as an Orc player when you simply just lay down the Dakka with this unit. I've did it a bunch of times. It's fun, absolutely fun. If you're gonna do the volume Dakka gun, the custom shooter, where it's 6 shots a piece, that's hilarious. In this case, he just brought triple twin kill saws. Hey, maybe I'm just too flavorful here, and maybe I'm wrong, but I like bringing the guns, or of course the devastating one combi blasters, right? Combi shooters. So you can even bring those, and those are kind of fun too. I think take advantage while we have them, guys. Enjoy the fun. In this case, if you're paying for the Mega Knobs and the Big Gas Brick, of course that's my bias, but enjoy. So 2 units of 5 Storm Boys, and then 2 units of Tank Busters. Absolutely loving the Tank Busters. I like that everybody's paying for the 2 rockets now. It does seem like just the bomb squig became incentive. But in reality, I think most people are just like, if I want them to get their value for this much points, I have to make sure they actually pop off, which means I really want those 2 additional shots. As for the mirror in this, in the matchup, the boys require a ton of investment and volume of punches with the snaggas, and it would cause you to invest your shooting resources a little bit early, but he also has less shooting resources. The breaker boys kind of want to do the same thing as Ghaz. In my opinion, normally it's and in this detachment, what I was saying is, or in any other detachment where you're just bringing like one nice, really reliable anti counter charge or deterrent from a high pressure army, I tend to just pay the extra cost for Ghaz plus a couple Mega Knobs rather than Breaker Boys and a War Boss, for example. I just pay the full tax of the actual most threatening unit that we can kind of bring overall as Orcs, and therefore I'm not saying there's a bad choice at all because Breaker Boys and War Boss are sick. But in this case, I don't think he just simply didn't have all of the extra shooting. That's really all I thought. Sometimes we just don't have all the stuff. So there's nothing wrong with Alex's list. I thought he brought a bunch of really cool things that I've personally been using and testing too. So shout out to you, Alex. Great job for the other games that you played. And then we move on to, and Jack won it all. So what does it mean to, have to lose a mirror to the guy who just won the whole event? Absolutely nothing. So great job, Alex. Then we move to the next and final game where he ended up putting up a close one. This is what I'm saying, where it wasn't just throwing it down like he just straight up lost. He just ran everybody over. There was a rival. Like always, the Sons of Fenris decided to stand up to the Great WAAAGH and decide they wanted some of that Dakka. They wanted some of that smoke. So the champions of Russ, came to hold the line to stop Jack Tight's Great WAAAGH. So we have Bjorn the Fell-Handed. I didn't say the name wrong. Hey, what's up, guys? You know, you chats beat me up last time. All right, so Bjorn is no joke, though, right? Bjorn is no joke. Bjorn is no joke. So reducing damage, having a 2 base armor save, being a character, throwing last cannons down range, being kind of pretty small to get where he wants to be. Great value to the army. He has a feel no pain as well. No clean way other than direct tank busters, throwing everything they got into him. Is a good way to kill him. Typically, he can interfere with a lot of mid-table stuff with his ability to make the cost of strats also go up. Then we have the captain, followed by another captain. Then we got the old boy Murder Fang, followed by Ragnar Blackmane. So Murder Fang is my favorite of the Space Wolves. So David, you know, my cousin who co-founded the channel, he's been a Space Wolf player since the beginning. So I'm a big fan of fighting and killing and dealing with Murder Fang. And he's the guy who endlessly fights to where if he's in range, he can pile and fight another unit. Therefore, if you were in a truck parking lot and he could just chomp through and then continue to pile into a unit, you punch him for piling into you, and then he punches through you, and then he continues. It's pretty awesome. Then we have Ragnar Blackmane, who's, of course, the rival of Ghaz with Dakka himself. He goes off kind of like a war boss, but he's kind of like always ready for that. Keep in mind that this detachment acts as a pseudo kind of their version of war horde. They get access to sustain, and then champion rust, and they can choose lethal as well if they start doing certain things in the battle. So it gets potent combat real quick. So we have 3 units of 5 assault intercessor. Oh wait, yeah, making sure they're not jump pack. Oh, my boy went off. Yeah. These are just assault intercessors. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of assault intercessors. Love to see that. Followed by 2 units of impulsors, followed by 2 5-man units of assault intercessors with jump packs, infiltrator squad, invader ATV, scout squad, stern guard, wolfen. Goodness, that is good pressure, staging, MSU, pressure, trading kind of army built up right there, right? A lot of stuff running up in all these WTC sort of layout terrains where they have those nice little L shapes and then really big ones that are set up around the middle of the field. Pretty dense terrain. Perfect for the 5-man units to kind of jump up inside of there, run out and really make it rain. And the Wolfen as well, they get extra movement because they're movement 8 base. Even his little vehicles, his invader ATVs, excellent scoring units right here for what they're for and their size, and a little bit of firepower if you need. So really, he's acting kind of orcish, right? Some impulsors, which would be their iteration of trucks, followed by a lot of skirmish units that go up the field. That means when you expose your typically, looking at Jack's list, 20-man unit of orc boys, that becomes dangerous when they're on an objective, even with their 5 feel no pain in their wall, simply because these guys get so much volume, and then they're re-rolling wounds when someone's on an objective for the assault intercessors specifically, right? And he has them in redundancy, so he's throwing a bunch of them at you. They want to fight and contest objective because they got 2 OT apiece, so he can try to hold his natural expansion and his home, and then actually just try to duke it out with you and not be thrown back on primary and not throw out so many assets that you're deleting him with your typically really, really cheap units. So this would be an excellent game nonetheless. So Jack definitely had to work for this. No fluke here. A lot of really successful players have been making that Champions of Rust kind of punch up. So shout out to Jack Tight. I don't know, I went back over here, but he ended up winning that one with an 11-point win right there. So shout out to Jack for winning this event overall. Whoa! To his Dakka wall. So let's take a look at it one more time. He has 3 Big Macs with shock attack. One is targeting squig, one is the big gob thunderbus, followed by 2 pain boys and then a Zagrot Wartsnagga. 2 20-man units of boys for those 2 pain boys, followed by 3 chucks, 2 5-man units of flash kits, a small Gretchen unit, followed by a large Gretchen unit, 3 10-man units of Ludas. Both the spanners on each unit brought 2 custom mega blasters, followed by 3 tank busters where their sergeants brought double rocket pistols. They did bring the pulsar rockets as well. So love it. SWAT team availability, reserve options, mid-board pressure, pressure to actually something to screen yourself and absorb the enemy's pressure if they want to do that to you. Flip enemy's natural expansion objective primary and actually cause the enemy to commit onto something that doesn't really have a reliable one-shot they don't usually have a one-shot capability to do so, right? The fact that it takes a lot of shooting for orc boys and you can kind of pull them back. Pain boys might regen a couple. The unit can kind of stay involved. Call one, and again, it runs up the field again. If the enemy can't one-shot it, or if you're staged up enough, and they're being too cautious, then they can't get enough lines of fire, and you pull yourself simply out of line of sight, or they don't commit enough to kill you with melee. Still the same thing occurs. They just get deleted, or they commit fully and then they get deleted. So nice concept here with Jack Tight. Love the fact that there is big mobs of boys involved in the successful GT winning list that specifically was always called to just be smooth brain Dakka of just trucks, transports, maximum of all the shooting units, and then ignore everything else. I'm glad that he proved the general's consensus wrong and brought the bunch of boys. So if we don't see walkers, it's at least nice to see some boys here, right? So let's move on to the next list, who was also at this same event, which was Mr. Courtney Rhodes. So he went 4-1, a very, very close loss on his one loss that he did have at this event. But I thought it'd be fun to look at another iteration of what people are running as more Dakka, as it was similar, yet actually a bit different. So we have 3 Big Macs with shock attack gun, same enhancements as usual of the Big Gob Thunderbuss, and then targeting squigs. But we do have Ghaz Thraka. Whoa! So Ghaz actually did show up. And you know who else showed up? Andrew Stone, more Dakka against Ork values. Ork want a good fight, not an easy fight. Sure, blowing gets is a little bit funny. We all get a good laugh, but that's not a wall. Orks the best. Whoa! For the $20 super chat to Mr. Andrew Stone. Very, very generous of you. And I think you are a golf boy. You definitely a golf boy at heart. I would say that there are many ways to WAAAGH, as I've mentioned many times. But I get your sentiment of that. You like to get stuck in, lad, and you just want it to be a challenge. It's almost like to you get to watch the new Invincible. Shout out to that thing, the show. From what we heard, we want our enemies to resist, right? So in this case, Andrew's saying, he wants the enemies to resist. He doesn't really want to just blow them up and get them off the field without any contesting. And that's true. Orks want to fight. That's why in lore, Ghaz would literally throw, calls to the enemies that he's invading to their planets and give them warnings, get the defenses, get ready to go. So yes, it's in our working nature to love to get stuck in and actually get some resistance when we get stuck in. And in that case, yes, most of the Ork community will concede and doesn't even try to contest that we could use some adjustments. We just don't want to get nerfed off the planet, and we don't want to lose our units that can't belong in other data sheets. Or sorry, those data sheets that can end up in other detachments. So shout out to you, Andrew, because you bring up a fun point. And like I said, you're just a golf boy, but the Bad Moon boys still count. Dakka boys are still legit boys, of course, absolutely. But you want them. You want them to resist, and when you should dock them off the table, they don't really get to resist too much. So back to Courtney Rhodes. Shout out to you. We have Ghaz Thraka. So yes, testing Ghaz Thraka. Now he can, in a way, act as a deterrent, like I've been saying, for pressure, as the enemy, 1, has something that can actually heroic intervene if they charge something near him. 2, they have something that gives off a big spam of lethal, so everybody can start to actually get stuck in. And 3, it just means that if they put anything of value but still not in shooting range, not anything with shooting range that you can get a line of sight to shoot, but still within charging range, Ghaz is still there as an ultimate counter punch. So it kind of acts as a different pressure, but it stacks with his 20-man unit of boys that he also brought on the field, that I presume had the war boss attached to them. Then he has Zagrat Wartsnag. And now to bring a 20-man unit of boys and Zagrat, like we've seen with Jack Titleist, where he has Zagrat and then 2 20-man units of boys. But on here, even Courtney's 1 20-man unit of boys. That makes a difference on the enemy. Typically, when it's that go turn and Zod gets up the field and maybe the boys have taken position as well in the mid-table, the enemy does not have the redundant volume to deal with both of those bricks at once, especially if they both possess the 5-up invuln simultaneously from an innate true WAAAGH, right? So if you get them to come in at the same time, that's the true efficiency of just bringing one 20-man unit of boys. It does require you to kind of get all those eggs in the basket kind of lined up, and the enemy does have a say if you can actually get Zod and boys and Ghaz all to get involved at the same time. But the boys just give you that option, and more mid-table play, boys do make sense in more Dakka. Even if you're playing on GW terrain, but maybe one 20-man unit might be interesting, maybe even a battle wagon for some of you kids. Then we have three 5-man units of flash kits, a big break of 22 Gretchen, followed by a small unit of Gretchen, a big brick of Luas with the spanner, bringing 2 custom Mega Blasters, which I do advise. 2 Mega Knobs that I should bring. What did he bring? He did bring, I'm looking at the list right here because I should have put what his weapons was, because he needs to bring the combi shooter. So he did bring combi shootings and war power claws. I do think have fun with your Mega Knobs while you can. You get some shooting. That's just me though. Then we have 3 units of 6 tank busters, and he did bring smash hammers along the rocket pistols. So he didn't go double pistols, he just brought rocket hammers, followed by 4 trucks. So this is a little bit of an iteration of Smooth Brain Dakka, but I love that he, like I like to suggest, paid the tax to just bring Ghaz. If everything on your list but Ghaz is Dakka, because Ghaz is the one melee unit you're willing to invest in, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. If you're going to pay for just simply one melee unit, you're like, well, I'm going to bring a Beast Boss and Beast Snagga boys because I need a deterrent. I need something that can run up and charge the enemy and get their respect in little buildings and nooks and crannies that I can't get to with shooting. In this case, well, we can assault and shoot, so you might always be able to, but you still need to be able to run up and punch people. A lot of the time, people are just bringing what I would say the bare minimum, maybe like a war boss and 5 knobs, or maybe like Beast Snagga boys and a beast boss, and I think that works. It's gonna work in some cases, but you might just want to bring the Ghaz tax, where it's the difference between Ghaz and 2 Mega Knobs and a war boss and breaker boys, for example. Is last time I did, I think like 60 points or 70-point difference. It's almost like you just want to pay for the Ghaz tax. That way you have the innate 4 damage, but you also get the lethal aura because you're also paying for Makari in that case. So of course, there's things to be thought there, but that's my opinion. That's why I'm not, against this Ghaz WAAAGH thing. And of course, it just stacks with the boys for all that mid-table presence, while your trucks kind of run the outskirts of the perimeter, stage up in the terrains, and then kind of disembark and shoot everybody that's staged up behind the terrain because they didn't want to stand in front of it. Or if they had to kind of commit to stand in front of it, they got more Dakka in the face. And if they try to run up and pressure you, well, you had boys to absorb the charge and then Ghaz's counter charge. Or imagine just Zod and Ghaz's lethal and the already silliness that it is. People would never expect that. So yeah. And yeah, of course, he gets this feel no pain, which is why I typically like to pay the full Ghaz tax. Yes, I like to pay the full Ghaz tax. Even in this detachment, I will pay for more than 2. But, Courtney was fine with just simply 2. I don't even think that's wrong. We have our preferences, right? But for the rest of us, you might just enjoy playing with more Mega Knobs. And I love shooting their guns. It's just too fun. Oh, I have his list up. So let's go over his path to victory, because context matters and it's fun. All right, so what's up to you gets in the chat? What's up? Yeah, and I did put a poll. Let me see what you guys are saying in the poll. I should check that real quick. I had it open to his enemy already. Might as well leave that up. So the poll so far, yeah, most of you guys are still playing the more Dakka. And I'm here for that. Yeah, I think, just have fun with it when you can. And if you don't want to hurt your friends' feelings, just bring stuff that's less efficient with more Dakka, which would be stuff with less volume and stuff that lacks rerolls. So that would help. So go ahead and bring your shooter boys, or just big bricks of boys. Also, don't forget those 20 million of boys all get pistols, and the pistols are absolutely bolt guns at close range, and that will do unexpected damage to most of your enemies. So, speaking of enemies, we have Custodes with the Lions of the Emperor. So we have a Blade Champion, a Shield Captain in the Loris Terminator armor, and then another one of those gets with Superior Creation. We have 2 Custodian Guard units, followed by 3 units of Alaris Terminators. One is a 3-man unit, and the other are 2-man units. 2 units of Grav Tanks, followed by a brick of Wardens, Witch Seekers, and then Caladius Assassins. So more Dakka in its current state, as we know, being able to remove cover, and really take. If you could just take a custode to its 4-up and then apply Orcs volume to that custode unit, that custode unit is most of the time annihilated. If it's anything but a warden, popping us, feel no pain. But in this case, you're multi-phase, which is what we always suggest on this channel, is don't go too heavy into any one phase. Therefore, having the combat potential, having something like, I don't know, reroll wounds on a big 20-man unit of boys would be absolutely appealing when Custos tried to play the I'm a big boy in the primary game. So big old 20-point there win for Courtney Rhodes. Love to see that. Not to mention, of course, he had all the other Dakka redundancy guns, but we all know tank buses pick up, Custodes. No one would ever object to that. And then we go to Space Marine Vanguard, Strike Force Marines. These guys are a bit, KG and such, right? But I have a feeling just Zod putting a pace on them would already make them weary. So we have Apothecary Biologist, Librarian of Phobos Armor, Lieutenant of Combi Weapon, Malnius Calgar, and then Uriel Ventress. Then we have a big brick of Aggressors. These guys have Flame, Storm, Gauntlet. So some decent Overwatch potential there, huh? Then we have Assault Intercessors with Jump Packs. We have 2 units of those, followed by a big brick of Centurions with Devastators. Yeah, with the las cannons, the missile racks, missile launcher right there, and the sergeant. I think the other guys have them too. Am I missing? Yeah, right here. All right, cool. They do a bunch of missile launchers. That could be a problem for your Orc boys. Then we have a big brick of company heroes, 6-man unit of Inceptors with assault bolters, followed by infiltrators, and then 3 units of scouts. A good amount of units for Space Marines, kind of for Vanguard. I was expecting more elite bricks ish. But you do have to worry about these Vanguard Devastator squads. Absolutely devastate, as they say. Your 20-man unit of boys, Ghaz, Dakka, any truck, and then allowing anybody to get line of sight to it and pick up the units with them would be interesting. The Aggressors for Overwatch would be interesting, and then Mania's Calgar and his durability would be interesting in itself. Vanguard with their reactive moves would be kind of freaking annoying, to be honest, as an ARC player. As you're looking to assault and shoot and close distance on someone, you could kind of get annoyed by the fact that other units in your army might start getting too close to them when you're trying to get these angles of fire to get redundant fire on one unit. But other than that, it's straightforward Orc murder, but it did actually give them a pretty hard score. So the mission, I'd like to know what was that was. Was it the mission or the deployment that made this harder? Were you just playing, with not enough lines of sight and they could just shoot you at range and stay far and then it not really interact with you? Maybe. So then we have his game where he actually lost. So he lost to the person who ended up going going second at this event, second place, where he got 311. So my boy was over here living on the edge. Shout out to Johnny. But yeah, so close game here. Very close for Courtney. Whenever it's this close, anybody could have won. So much respect. No shame in losing here, especially when you're dealing with something as simply redundant as Chaos Baby Night Spam. So this has been kind of an annoyance for Orc players for most of the edition. The fact that a lot of different armies, that these guys have a lot of different redundant, durable T11, high volume with invuln, units, and with good battle line OC does bother Orcs, specifically when we didn't have tank buses and breakers and such that are really good for killing any of these guys in exchange. But in reality, these guys are just really, really cheap. And Orcs just don't have, too many really reliable ways to kill with vehicles or trade out with them. And these units all have nice redundant phases of offense where they'll shoot a truck and then be able to charge the contents of said truck. Therefore, one of them in an improper position on you on your end means that they can kind of pick up a whole flank with simply a couple war dogs breaking through or surviving when you've disembarked and done Dakka or stuff like that. So this is kind of common. You have to. A lot of Orc players, even really good ones, are kind of like, oh, you see this and you're like, all right, this could be annoying if I'm playing like Purge the Foe specifically. It gets a little annoying. So we have 6 brigands. It's always going to be 6 brigands followed by 6 carnivores. And then, if someone doesn't have something else, they might change it. And then a stalker. So pretty much always the same list. It is something you should be expecting though as an Orc player, knights in general. So Anything could have happened here. Would have liked to know what mission it was to make the difference, but it happens, Courtney. Sorry to see it tonight, but it is what GW it is. So then we go to his fourth game, where he comes back with vengeance. Where we have someone talking about a hunter rig in chat. I see you out there, Mike. So then we have him going into a Plague Company. Okay, Death Guard, another one of Ork's favorite adversaries. We have a Biologist Putrefier, Foul Blightspawn, Lord of Contagion, and then a Mortarion. Plague Marine unit, a big brick of them with their special weapons in their Rhino. Did they bring the old 1-2 punch? Yeah, Foul Blightspawn, Biologist Putrefier. So you're getting a critical 5+. They have lethals for that. And then they have this dude's come with his flamers, and they have fight first. Yeah. So then we have 3 units of Predator Destructors. These guys are quite effective, of course, being able to reduce your save in general. Just reduce your save when you're in Contagion Ring. Really appealing. And then they get to add AP, good volume, and moderate light armor popping. So good chance of popping on truck. And then dealing with elite infantry. But then they bring their bread and butter of 3-man unit of Death Shroud, followed by 3 floated bloat drones. Absolutely annoying. Would love if Death Dreads came down anywhere near this cost. Now, Death Dreads are more killy in certain detachments, but that is subject to change. And it's not, something that always happens. I'm not saying the same exact point cost, but get them a little closer. That'd be sick. They could act as that kind of early game. We go out to claim or contest an objective. You come out and invest to kill me. It takes a little more than I'm worth, and boom, we get some good trades off. That's how it works here as well. But then he also comes with the Mephitic Blight Hauler, which is essentially the same thing. A Plug Burst Crawler. Maybe it's for his home field and he likes to end direct. Orks hate that. If you had Storm Boys, if you bring them, but hey, we're on trucks. Followed by a 10-man unit of Poxwalkers, a Beast of Nurgle, and then the big old brick of Nurglings. Most people are going to be bringing these big old brick of Nurglings. In general, they're so cheap right now. And everybody wants to have Infiltrate, which I do recommend. It's pretty useful. Not all the time, but, it is. And they're quite useful. Now, the Predators are an issue, like I said, for trucks and for 20-man units of boys. But you are very happy that you have Ghaz on your list. They don't necessarily know that Ghaz is not going to be able to reliably deal with Morty on his own. Not everybody always knows that or understands that. But the fact that he can come in and help finish him off and actually gain the respect to keep something like Plague Marines off you. If you do get a charge off on the Plague Marines, even if they fight first, there's a chance that you can tank it on your bodyguards, and then Ghaz can still clean them up. And it keeps the Death Shrouds in check in general. So I do appreciate that he had some tools to kind of deal with this. It would be a challenging matchup considering they do have an Old Faithful Mortarion. Not Mortarion, sorry. Old Faithful. Where is that? No, they don't. No. I was going to say, but what I do appreciate here, like I always say, and I don't want to preach it, but you guys seen how it is, Zagra Wartsnaga, right? Zagra Wartsnaga plays a big impact on this game. Even if the Nurglings can kind of infiltrate, once you deal with them, if you can just surround Mortarion, for example, with Zagra, that sucks for him. He's stuck there for quite a hot minute, and then you interact and deal with the rest of his army. So a lot of people ask me, do you have to kill Morty? No, you don't. But the enemy might think you can with Ghaz, but you're probably not gonna. Therefore, you go kill his other stuff with Ghaz, and you let Zod surround Morty and hold him in place. So shout out to him for a 20-point win, because I'm pretty sure that's what he did. That's always kind of like the best output if you have those kind of two tools where you're like, well, Zod will go deal with you over there. You'll get no primary for holding you over there, and then I'll just go take all your stuff and kill you. Whatever's slowing is in place. The fact that we now have a WAAAGH will means that we are definitely much faster than them, and we can continue pressure, and even our own odd durability. So that's a good way to deal with like 20-man unit of Plague Bears as well. The 20-man unit of boys would have a fun time. Not Plague Bears, 20-man unit of Plague Marines. The boys would be like, oh well, now we're getting stuck in, even though you get 5 first. It could hurt a lot, but in some cases you might just deal with it just to pick them up anyways and win that table presence. Then we go into his 5th game, where he goes into the Tau Empire. Experimental prototype Cadre, the fish boy. Then we have Cadre Fireblade, Commander Fireside, Commander Starsight, Coalstar Battlesuit, Breacher Line, Devilfish, unit of Fire Knife Battlesuit, Sunforge Battlesuit, Ghost Keel, Crew, Pathfinder, Baby Piranha, Double Riptide, Skyraid Gunship, 2 stealth suits. Oh, sorry, 3 units of stealth suits, followed by 2 units of Vespid. So simply a lot of stuff, which a lot of this stuff is very, very vulnerable to more Dakka. Our profiles, Tao's not known for really being like the highest toughness profiles. So the battle suits are subject to being eviscerated. These guys don't have great Overwatch typically either, so we can put pressure on them. They do usually bring some sort of infiltration between the stealth suits. So those are like little 2-man units, but then again, what is a 2-man unit doing but getting in the way temporarily? You still call a WAAAGH. You shoot one of dudes away with little pistols, even if they're -1 to hit. You charge up something else, you swing your Zod unit, and then you get in the way of all his guns, or you even tag something else. So you could pretty much just jail these guys, even if they have some infiltrators, unless they're really shenanigan-y. You could even delay it, move up the field, scare them, and then do it and throw the boys up them as well, alongside Zod. Then they're really not doing anything, and then you're just them up as they respond to all of your 20-man unit of chat. So he did get a big fat 20-point win there. So let's shout out his list one more time. We have 3 units of shock attack guns, Gazgul Thraka, a war boss, Zagra Wartsnaga, followed by a 20-man unit of boys, 3 5-man unit of flash kits, maximum size unit of Gretchen, minimum size unit of Gretchen, 10 Ludas, 2 Mega Knobs, 3 units of tank buses, and then 4 trucks. So shout out to Courtney Rhodes and his Dakka. Whoa! So it's great to see the more Dakka. But time to ask the fun question. What about the War Horde? So the War Horde is still out here and kicking. Our boy Juuso and Kankinen, right? I think. In Finland, Broad War Horde going 4-1. Now, this guy has 1 unit of tank buses and 1 Big Mac with shock attack gun, but for the most part, this list is still working, still in sorry, because this guys didn't have the point data slate change. I should have mentioned, right? So this did change at least by I think it was 20 points, but there's a lot of other things you can change about this list and still make it work. But I still wanted to bring up the question is, what about War Horde? People are worried that if GW nerfs us too hard, they'll keep playing it. And then on the other hand, some people are saying they're still playing War Horde anyways, at least competitively, because they're familiar with it and because they don't think, they do think that GW is going to kind of overdo it. So now, this event was actually won by Nicholas, which is the Green Tide player who I failed to recover the notes document from. But I will cover him next week, and I'll have all his juicy notes as he is a part of our Discord. So shout out to him. He seems like a funny guy, but we're time difference. So I do actually have the missions. Don't have the layout and everything because it seems like they had different ones per table. But I do know what missions he was doing per round. Mr. Yusuf Kankinen. So we'll talk to Nicholas soon, or we'll get his notes soon and then know what's going on here. But he still got 5th place and he just ended up losing the last round. So great work by him and his War Horde list. So let's take a look at the War Horde and how our gits are doing who love to get stuck in. He said, I feel like all those lists got jailed by Zod. I feel like the last 2 did for sure. The other ones, they put up good fights. Then, so we have 2 beast bosses, a Big Mac with Drilla and Tractor Blaster. Interesting. Big Mac with shock attack gun. Ghazgul Thraka making his appearance once again in War Horde. Absolutely love that. I think I would always do it if I was still playing War Horde right now. 1 baby mech, and then a war boss with Follow Me Lads. Interesting how he didn't bring Follow Me Lads on the Big Mac. I don't think that's just me. That typically, if I would tell you this was what was happening, that if you brought the Big Mac and you brought War Horde, you would assume if you paid for Follow Me Lad, it would go on the Big Mac. But in this case, you put it on the War Boss. Pretty cool. 2 10-man units of V Snaggle Boys, followed by a big 20-man unit of boys. 3 trucks, a battle wagon, 1 unit of breaker boys, 5 flash kits, 2 10-man unit of grots, 2 mega knobs, 2 storm boys, and then 1 tank buster unit. I do appreciate the fact that he did bring some Dakka, right? So the mech alongside the battle wagon is something we've seen consistently alongside some of these war horde lists where they actually want to have the value not only of the battle wagon security and staging potential, but they also want it to be more reliable in combat and in shooting, to the point that if I give it +1 to hit from a baby mech, it's able to hit on 2s and then actually shoot on 4s. That is appealing because you still want it to be doing something, right? That was one of the contentions that you can have between a kill rig and a battle wagon is the kill rig is activating more times if you're counting all of its phases. So the battle wagon in this case gets some value from that. Now, of course, you could always use a truck and then use firing deck, give that +1 to hit, and then the stuff shoot out of it, whether it's tank busters and flash kits. If they're acting as a SWAT team, then they can shoot out of that. So that's a good idea for the most part. So having the dock is good for that. And then 2 units of Storm Boys, kind of what I like is the bare minimum. Very rare that people get away with not taking those. And if you can pay for the 3rd Ghaz bodyguard, I do typically advise it, but it's easier said than actually done. Now, he brought a 20-man unit of boys. Again, we see the beast bosses are like no other in this detachment, my boy. So I'm down for beast bosses almost at all times in War Horde. But I do appreciate the 20-man unit of boys. And in that case, that's where he put Follow Me Lads on. And then he didn't put it on the Big Mac because he put it on the War Boss. And then they both went in the same unit. But, you know, that's just me saying I would put it on the Big Mac anyways. As for the battle wagon, it had hard case, cannon, lava, wrecker ball, love, and they did have the death roller and stuff like that, and the big shooters, of course. So let's take a look at his path to a victory. Preferred loadout on the wagon. I bring the zap gun because I just roll 1 dice real quick and just try to put a bunch of damage into him. Because I typically don't bring a mech to shoot my battle wagon like other people like to do. I don't waste a lot, or not waste, but use a lot of my time to shoot his guns unless I really, really need to clear something. So we go into his first game. Make sure I'm not pressing the wrong names because my boy's out here in Finland. Actually, I should have shut off the event more because my boy Nicholas told me that this is the biggest event in Finland from what I've seen. And yeah, see, so he has the maps right here. It says right here the rounds and everything of the ITC. So, oh, I clicked the wrong thing. I'll go back over here. Bam. Let's take a look at his first game. Okay, cool. So, in his first game, Gladius Task Force, he had Lieutenant with Combi Weapon, Malnius Calgar, Intercessor Squad, Basic Intercessor for Sticky, huh? Do you guys still like Sticky? Are you guys still using your boys too? I feel like shout out to the chat. Do you guys still use your boys? You still feeling sticky right now? That'd be pretty cool. So he brought a Basic Intercessor Squad, followed by a Assault Intercessor Squad with Jump Pack, 2 units of Ballista's Dreadnought, a company of heroes, Gladiator Reapers. So Gladiator Reapers are slept on by most Marine players, but they're absolutely devastating to Orc players, right? This has double sustain. This has sustain 2 for his primary weapon for this Gatling cannon. It has sustain 2 and actually does big damage on Orc Boy bricks. If they preemptively, call the Oath of Moment on like your 20-man unit of boys, if it's not inside of a wagon, of course. But if it's on the table already and then that unit of boys moves once they've called it, this does devastating damage to a unit of boys on Overwatch, even where I've lost 9-10 boys on Overwatch to a Gladiator Reaper when that unit was oathed. So something that you would consider going into the game. Then we have an Incursor Squad, a Scout Squad, triple Vindicators, and then double Whirlwind. So luckily this doesn't exist as much anymore because GW did nerf a bunch of these units, but it's all good. He ended up putting a 100-point win on that one, just dunking on Marines. Typically, Marines just don't have enough activations to deal with all our stuff, and Oath doesn't work as effectively when all our stuff's in transports. Not saying it's not a hard game by any means, but if you're very familiar with them, they're not familiar with you, you know what to do. So then we go into a second game where he goes into the Necron Scatterstar arsenal. So we have Emotech Stormlord, the Silent King, Hexmark Destroyer, Locust Lord, Technomancer, 5 Flayed Ones, Scorpack Destroyers, 2 Destroyer Locust Destroyers, a 3-man unit of Heavy Destroyers, Canoptic Wraith, and then triple Doomsday Arc. Now these guys did go up in points even more. We'll see if the archetype remains. But might get the devastating wounds damage on him as well. 97-point win here on the Scatterstar. They do not want this sort of orc output to be anywhere near any of their units. Typically stuff like maybe the Silent King himself would be somebody that would kind of try to stat check you. But in this case, you know, all this beast boss redundancy and even a little bit of tank buster redundancy, things could get out of hand for him very quickly. Even just having Ghaz in the menu, which means you could just pop lethal for someone, critical 5+, and things get out of hand for Necrons. Volume is always king when you're dealing with your Necron counterparts. So always remember that if you're an orc player. If you want the answer, bring more volume stuff to kill them. NOC. Then we go into his third game. Okay. Which is Chaos Knights, which is going to be Baby Knight spam with a little bit of allies. So we have 5 Brigands, 1 Executioner, 3 Carnivores, and then the Walker Stalker. 3 Baby Nurgling squads, followed by a Plague Drone with Rodriguez on the side. So he's a little bit of Nurgle cake on the side, boy. So I think that's fine. It's not as typically effective as full on Spamish. And because Rodriguez becomes kind of like a actual point liability when you can actually one-shot him as an orc player, which is, you know, Beast Boss plus Gaz's Aura, uncritical 5+, Unbridled Carnage, boom, you pick up Herodigus, and they're like, oh, that was a great trade for you, and the momentum continues. Now, Ghaz also helps you with everybody else dealing with all the carnivore spams as well. So love to see that 90-point win there as well. As we see the, you know, the Be'lakor demon, let's say that greater demon list comes up, knights come up because some of their counterparts got taken down. Let's say Tyranids come up. There might just be some, and World Eaters are coming up, but there might be something just innate to even just tweaking more Dakka a little bit too much, and people are back on War Horde. Because it's just so freaking strong with what it could still do it when it's playing in particular the meta, right? Then we go into his fourth game where he's, speaking of Demonic Incursion, the Be'lakor demon list. So we have Be'lakor, Great Unclean One. This is actually not the Be'lakor detachment, but as Be'lakor, the Great Unclean One with Endless Gifts, Shalaxi Hellbane, Scarbrand, and the Maskell Slanesh, Plague Bearers. 3 3-man units of Fiends, and then 3 3-man units of Screamers. Now, Fiends change, so they might not be on this again, but you just simply should expect to see demons on the menu at events you hit. Be familiar with them and what their data sheets are, what it takes to kill them. But if you're in War Horde, you have what it takes to kill them. If you're bringing it standard, Beast Bosses, Ghaz, volume is king. But then he goes into our last get, which is the get that we're going to cover next week, who ended up winning the whole event that I have notes for, which is our boy Nicholas. So Nicholas was the Green Tide player. So we'll have details exactly how he won this game, so tune in for that. But he brings to us what I like to call the Noah archetype. So Noah's Ark, where he's in our Discord. Noah is here in America. He's also been featured on the channel. He gave notes and everything. But our boy Nicholas is dealing with a whole different meta, whole different terrain layout. So he had to come out with his own ideas and his own tweaks to it. So he gave everybody love. He's all over the chat talking, and he's a lovely individual. So he did let some things be known that he did put a different character combinations than what we featured before. So he has a war boss with the +1 strength and enhancement, ferocious show off alongside a pain boy. He has a pain boy on their own with the squad, a weird boy on his own with the squad, and then he has a war boss with the CP regeneration on another unit. So he does have the characters spread out and in that sort of way. He has 4 20-man units of boys, and then a 10-man unit of boys, 2 5-man units of flash kits, a Gretchen unit, commandos, followed by 5 Ludas, and then 2 units of Storm Boys, followed by 2 units of Tank Busters. So this list did simply change. Typically, they took out the Ludas and Doors. I think pretty much just Ludas for the most part, from what I've seen, and some other stuff. So this list still fully remains intact. And he did say he intentionally brought Green Tide, reading the meta, reading that in this community that he's at, that everybody's bringing a lot of 3 wound models, a lot of tough vehicles, demons, elite infantry. So Nicholas was doing a direct counter to the meta. And I don't think Arget, Usuf doesn't have options or the weapons for this, because he absolutely does to a degree, but it's hard if the enemy doesn't give them to the tide early enough to you for you to start cracking into it. Nicholas having infiltrators, for example, and being able to kind of dictate space would present its own interesting challenge at some point. And the fact that Nicholas's list does have guns too, so it's not like he's not doing anything. So both of them have a little bit of guns. Both of them want to get stuck in and fight. Ultimately, I would say there might be a question of, is there enough volume to chew through everything? Because sustain doesn't always go off, and not everything is viable to punch another orc boy. For example, when you're speaking of what it takes to for like a tank buster to punch another boy is not necessarily wounding them well. Breaker boys don't necessarily have the volume to punch through a bunch of orc boys themselves. 5 flash kits that aren't on the wall aren't really wounding boys that well, and doesn't have a great change output of actually killing them. And then even your own boys not on the wall don't do great into another 20-man unit of boys, but those boys could hypothetically reroll wounds against this 20-man unit of boys, and then things could get kind of rough. So no shame in losing to the person who won the event there, who did a bunch of practice training on TTS and had a good understanding of what Nicholas was trying to do. So we'll cover him next week with proper notes so that he can get the love that he deserves. But Usuf Kakakin did a great freaking job as well with Warhorde, and reminding everyone in the community why Warhorde is always on the menu, should always be revered. So double beast bosses followed by a Big Mac, which is an awesome tech piece and get for going through screens when you don't have enough Dakka. Big Mac with shock attack gun, Ghaz, Ghoul, Thraka, Mech, War Boss, follow me, lads. 2 10-man unit of Beast Boss, 20 boys, 3 trucks, a battle wagon. Breaker boys, Ghaz. I'm sorry, I already said Ghaz. A 5-man unit of flash kits, 2 minimum size unit of Gretchen, minimum size unit of Meganobs with one with with a kill saw and a power claw in each hand. 2 5-man unit Storm Boys, and then a tank buster with rocket pistols and the pulsar rocket. So shout out war to another successful war horde. So you gets, let's look at what the chat has to say. But all in all, everybody should still be in high spirit, because we've always been good. Since it was just Warhorde, Bully Boys, Dread Mom, we've been having success. So org players, even if they did hit us and more Dakka does lose its way and Tactical Brigade isn't as strong as it could be, I recommend that everybody just play the detachment that they have the most fun with, that they feel like they can express their collection and what they prefer to play as well, and then stick to that detachment and try to really fill it out and play it to your own most competitive aptitude way, and always continue to keep learning and stress testing yourself and expanding who you play, where you would play, and trying to really grow as a player, because really it's about the experience and what we're actually doing as people and players that spend all this time in this hobby. So make sure you make it fun, and don't worry about what GW is doing to ruin the competitive players' day who chased the dream of running all the looters they could find, right? We're playing with what we got to the best of our capability, in a nice, competitive yet mindful way, where we get the most time for our entertainment for our time, and that's what we're really looking to do as the orc community. So if you're playing more Dakka, if you're playing with your friends, go ahead and use the most fun things that you can, that are most exaggerative, hilarious. Go ahead and be Mork Perry and use a death dread with multiple big shooters. Go do that if you're a psycho, that's fine. But of course, we should always have a great time and not be weary or dreadful or feel that we're in a precarious position because of GW, right? We dictate the position we're in as the player base and as the community. Luckily, we already have decent rules that we can now continue to explore. So we've been on an up and down roller coaster that is making people just kind of lose heart. I think you should feel the other way. I think you should look back on what we still have available to us that's still really good, and continue to explore those ideas and those options. You can see just right off the bat here, everybody thought they had more Dakka figured out to an extent of how easy and simple it is to already win, but the actual first performances and lists we've seen didn't follow those exact structures and actually brought a lot of orc boys and such. So there's stuff left in the piggy bank that we can still pull from, even if GW tries to kneecap us in the next data slate. So, or even in, an immediate change where they just immediately want to come at us and change more Dakka. So don't lose heart. Anybody playing Warhorde, Bully Boys, The Hunt, Dread Mom is freaking sick. I promise you'll still have a good time as an orc player. So don't get discouraged. Get your hobby things done. Check out our paint competition and our community, because there's only one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall, because we not get T-foul.